Oh, that's. I'm gonna go ahead and call to order then if anybody. So Michael's got it, yeah. Okay. All right, everybody ready for roll call? Oh. Did you get an invite, Walt? Okay, Michael's gonna. Then I can. You guys. It's fine, it's fine, everything's fine. I go double back on the lake, but yeah. Okay. I'm gonna call to order this study session of the Rapid City Board of Education on December 10th. Ms. Shirley, may we have a roll call, please?
Troy Carr,
Here.
Jamie Clapham,
Here.
Christine, I'm not sure about, Donna Moore. Here. Michael Berkland,
Here.
Walter Schwan, and Katie Urban.
Here. Request everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are on to the approval of the proposed agenda. Need a motion?
So moved.
It's been,
Second.
right, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? All right, and it's been motioned and second to approve the agenda as it is written. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Persons wishing to address the school board, there are not any people to address the school board, so we will just roll along quite efficiently. And items for board discussion, number 6, the state report card update, and that will be Miss Jen Roberts.
I emailed you on, if you use mine, you'll also be Michael Berkland, like Mr. Swan needs to change his name as well. Seems to be working. Yeah, of course.
Okay, slowly but surely. So is this working okay? Okay, all right, sounds good. So here we go. Okay.
I don't think they're saying that. That's just on your screen. That's not in the chat. Gotcha. Okay. We're good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'll be sharing information about our state report card, and all of the data that I have here came from the South Dakota Department of Education. First, I want to talk about a little bit about our student pillar. Rapid City area schools will welcome and acknowledge all students for their value as an individual in a safe environment where they are educated and prepared with skills to be successful. So part of education, educating them, we want to look at our progress and how well we're doing with educating them. The first thing I do want to talk about with our testing and the state report card and what that looks like is that really is what we like to call snapshot data, because it is just a picture of one day a year. So if you took pictures of me every day, you'd have kind of an average, but there'd be some which would honestly be quite terrible. And some that maybe I'd be kind of glamorous, you don't know. But that's kind of when we have an assessment like this that is a snapshot, that it's just one particular day. For many of our students, it's kind of their average, it's where they're at. And then for some students, they're having a really good day, and some students are not having a good day. So we have to kind of look at that for what it is, that we only know how they were doing on that day and take the information in that way. So for that reason, with our student pillar, when we're looking at how well we're doing, we chose to use some different assessments for that to look at student progress. Because again, this is one day, this is one time a year. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this, but please do know that we have other assessments where we try to figure out a little bit more about what's going on. The other part of this is that it shows us kind of after the fact, because we are testing them in the spring before school gets out, and then you're not going to have those same students next year. So a lot of those students are still in Rapid City, but it's talking about kind of what happened in the past. So it's a little hard to use it for planning, for future planning on how to improve. So we use it, but it's not in some ways some of our best information. So. Okay, so in mathematics, 37% of our students were proficient or above. That means the students that are not in that 37% were not yet proficient, and there's quite a range. Some of them were within 5 points, and some of them were much farther away, but there's quite a range that fall in there. 47% of our students made progress in mathematics from where they were the year before. The other percentage of students, that means, either stayed where they were or maybe even decreased a little bit. So this is what we would see for the entire district. If I move that over, does it move it? If you can slide your own around. Our students, I'm not sure as I'm moving it, it's not slide. There we go. Nice. So you can see where our students were at starting in 2017. Don't forget, we have that gap in 2020. But this is as a district where we were for all of the grades that tested, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 11th. That's where we're at. Here is where our students, sorry, I need to go back if I can. Is it gonna let me do that on this one?
To this one.
Yes, I think so. Okay, thank you so much. So this is our elementary group combined, and you can see that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, what that looks like, and you're able to see again a comparison of our years. Then this is splitting out 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Now in this, you can look at 3rd grade between the 2 years or more years, 4th grade between the years. But if you really want to look at groups of students or cohorts, if you look, for example, at 3rd grade in 2023, that they scored 38.7. And then the next year in 2024, when they were fourth graders, they were at 38.2. So looking at a diagonal really gives you a better picture of a specific group of students and how they do over time. This is our elementary students by ethnicity. They break them out into subgroups. I know that is of particular interest, so we did choose to show you this information. Now, keep in mind that these groups, when you're looking at the group of 2023 to 2024, the fifth graders that were there in 23 are gone in 2024, and the third graders are added in. We have a whole new group. So there is some variation in there when we're looking at that. We're not comparing exactly the same students to the same students. This one shows our subgroup of students that are, their families or the students self-identified as Native American. And that is compared to our other ethnic subgroups combined. And that is just for math for our elementary. Then we're looking at math for elementary in our subgroup of students that are identified as being in poverty. And those students are identified, if you'll recall, as they were qualified for free and reduced lunch. So it's that particular kind of identifier that the state of South Dakota puts through. And, that's the only thing that marks that. Here is the composite of our elementary grades, sixth, seventh, and eighth. And you can see how sixth, seventh, and eighth compare from 23 to 24, keeping in mind that from 23 to 24, you lost a full class and gained a full class. So there's that variation in there. A third of those students are completely different. Here is our middle school math divided out by grade level. Again, if you're looking at the diagonal, that's probably the most helpful. So for example, in 2023, our sixth grade scored 35.9, that is the percentage of students that were proficient or above. And then the next year, it was 37.8. So again, looking at the diagonal does help you see one particular cohort and how they compare. Don't forget though that 2020 is missing. So it's a little bit of a gap there. You can't count on that. This is our middle school math proficiency by ethnicity. Again, because we know there is particular interest there. And you really can't see this one by a diagonal. You're not seeing cohorts here. So in that part is not of the same use that some of them are. Here we're looking at, again, the ones that families self-identified the students as being Native American. And then all the other subgroups just combined into one. So you can see that comparison. And then we've got our students that were identified as being in poverty, their families by that free and reduced lunch identifier only. And this is our math proficiency for our middle school students with a disability and comparing to those students that did not have that as an identifier. This is our overall proficiency for 11th grade for high school. Now, these are completely different groups every single time, and we do not have data from 9th and 10th grade, and then we do not take data in 12th grade. For that reason, when we're looking at our student pillar, we're using the pre-ACT they take in 9th grade, the pre-ACT in 10th grade, and then looking at it with the ACT in 11th grade because we find that information a little bit more helpful when we're trying to see where things are at and how students are doing. This is our subgroups by ethnicity. And if you'll see that there is one part where there is a broken line, and that is because there were not enough students on that end size. And I did bring my handy dandy information guide that I rely on. And the end size has to be at least 10. So that particular year for that group of 11th graders, there was not an end size of at least 10. And then this is our high school math and those that self-identified as Native American, and then those other ethnic subgroups all combined. Our students that are identified again as being in poverty. Students with a disability. So following the math cohort data is helpful, and you can see that we color coded. So you can see how cohorts fall. Again, high school is not included in cohort tracking since the scores are juniors. We don't test them as freshmen or sophomores. And so there's a break. And because in 2020, we did not test, that's part of why we've got that there. But you can see where third grade in 22 scored 40, and then in 23, 42, and then the next year 37. And you can see where fifth grade in 22 was 32, the next year 35, the next year 37. So that diagonal line gives you a lot better idea of what a particular group of students as a cohort looks like, even with ins and outs for overall for the district. Moving on to our English language arts. So sorry.
Yeah, before we get into English language arts, I know that's a lot of information specifically around math. Do you have any initial questions regarding that, that information that Ms. Roberts shared?
I do, I'm trying to find my screen, sorry. I was wondering, do we know, so we just started a new
Mhm.
curriculum, math curriculum recently. Do we have data to show if typically right after a new curriculum, do you usually see a dip? I know there's a
Yes.
learning curve for
Mhm.
staff and for students, a different style of learning, and like how long, do we have any idea how long we usually see that dip to correct or change?
Research shows that when we adopt new resources, there is a dip in the first year. And part of that, I believe, is that as teachers are learning the new resource, as well as students learning new things that go with it. And then it gradually typically does increase after that. But the research shows that pretty much across the board. When new resources are adopted, you're going to see a dip. And then whenever the standards have been updated, we have to, or really need to adopt new resources because they have to match the state standards. And so we're always in a cycle of doing that. Things, even if we were like, wow, we're really good at this, this is awesome, but it doesn't match the standards anymore and it becomes outdated. So there's challenges. Yeah.
Thank you.
One thing I would say that I looked at as well, and I just was emailing with some people at the Department of Education this afternoon, is it is an expectation that we test at least 95% of our students, and that's including in all of our subgroups. And so the state will tell us when we did not meet that marker, and when we did not, any students really that would be under the 95% or taking us up to the 95% go into our averages as a 0. So when students and families choose not to test, or when they are absent and we're not able to test them, it makes a really big difference to these numbers.
Do you have an idea how many students that is?
I don't know offhand, but I know that we did get information about, some of our schools and subgroups, that were below the 95%. And so that's something that, we've communicated with those schools and we're working on it. But that is sometimes a family choice, so it can be challenging.
I understand that it's just a snapshot and maybe it's not comparing apples to apples, but when you look at other data sets like MAP and are they reflecting the same sort of changes? So, in math, did they go down or what are you seeing?
We do see that dip, pretty much across the board when there's new, resources adopted. But also part of choosing MAP for our student pillar is that we are able to see, we're just doing the mid-year testing, it's test sweeps this week. And makeups next week, which is, tight to fit in with the, thrilling, excitement of the season and Christmas programs and all of that, throwing a little bit into the mix. But we'll be able to see this is what it looked like right when we started school and how those same students have progressed to the middle of the year. So we're always really excited to see what that looks like. And it's nice to use that because we can say, ooh, okay, maybe we need to change up some of our instructional strategies. It's not meeting the needs of this particular group of students, or this is working great. So it's really nice. And the schools drill down to the teacher level and to the student level and look, how can okay, this group of students doesn't have this. What can we do to meet that need? So it's very helpful. Okay. All right. So 45%, sorry.
You alluded to some of the students being within 5%. Is that, and you talked about that. Is there a number to that? Can you define that? Is that 100 students, 10 students?
Within a percentage of being proficient?
Yes.
We can look at that. There's reports that I can run, to take a look at that, particularly by grade level and at different schools. There are some things, so if you would like me to get that for you, I can do so.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
I mean, that was your point. I mean, it wasn't, it was just
Yeah, no,
asking for
no,
clarification on
Yeah.
that. Is it, your statement was that we have students within 5 points?
yep,
And I just would like that defined. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, it's not a hard question. It's just, it's your statement. I just wanted to.
no,
to
absolutely.
clarify.
And it's not a hard question. I just want to make sure that I give you some real things that are accurate. And so it is on the score where that cut line is, they say above this is proficient. And we can look at, particular reports that we can run of students that were within 5 points or within 10 points of that. And that gives the school some good information for the next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost a nudge, you know what I mean? So,
Right?
I also am I would be remiss in my duties as a Lakota, as a member of the community that's represented in this report. The deficiencies between Native American and even our general general student ed is alarming.
It
And
is.
it's been alarming for years, but my question is when and how are we going to address this? Do we have a
Yeah.
plan? I mean, it's just, I know it's been ongoing. You can look at the data, you can look at all of this, and I just would someday like to see somebody step up and say, there's got to be a different way to do this. I mean, it's obvious that there's a lot of intelligence in that particular subgroup. But the idea is, when are we going to address it? So, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody talks about, test scores as a rating of your education. And,
Yes.
It doesn't, it's very discouraging as a native, as a Lakota that,
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
hard to look at. It really is. And I know there's many factors. I talked it over with Dr. Strasser and we've had conversation, but I'm just wondering, when do we,
Yep.
I mean, the OCR report, everybody's talking about that. I mean,
Yep.
I can't go anywhere without anybody addressing that. But this is almost criminal, I mean? It is.
It is absolutely alarming, and I would say that, in many of our schools, Native Americans, that subgroup is one that we are not testing at the 95%. So that people are opting out of the test or they are not there on test days. So that's probably step one, is I don't think that it's a great reflection of what they know and what they can do, because we just don't have the data for some of them. So I think that would be step one to really looking at how accurate it is having more students present and more students that are testing.
Okay. Is there a push, I mean, in a student pillar for attendance and.
There is, and, I know that, one of the things that we're doing, which I'll be getting into or bring up a little bit here too, is, Dr. Justin Conroy is really focused on that. And one of the things he's doing is really trying to, make sure that attendance is, tracked equally or equitably or, evenly, I guess, that all schools are following the same protocols. And so we're on top of where we actually are or aren't for attendance. So he's been doing some training and retraining and working with different buildings, try to make sure that that's as accurate as possible. And so that's one. And then also, as schools are seeing, hey, we're missing these students, and doing more to reach out more quickly when they're noticing that. So those are some of the things that I know are happening right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would add in, our principals are very in tune with where they are in terms of that 95% attendance and students taking the SBAC tests, and they take a lot of pride in working towards having students there and completing the assessments. So that is an emphasis on their end to Jen's point.
And I think that it takes all of us encouraging students to do their absolute best. It's not graded. It's not, if the students kind of, what do we get out of it? So that's always a challenge, at a different, you will have students, even adults that'll say, oh, I remember I just made patterns instead of really answering the questions, or, whatever it is. And it's trying to get into helping people do their best and understanding that it is important to the entire community, because we want to put the best foot forward for Rapid City and for Rapid City area schools and for all of our subgroups, and for us to really know where are they and, what's true and what isn't. And when people take the test and take it, I guess, seriously and put full effort into it, that's when we really know. And when they don't, we just don't have a very good picture. It's not accurate. So in our ELA, 45% of our students scored proficient or above, and 51% of our students made progress. So they improved their scores. The other percentage either stayed the same or may have reduced some. This is what all of our composite of all of the grades that test looks like. So you can see there is that 1% decline for ELA for all of those that test. Then you can see our elementaries combined together, 3, 4, and 5, what that looks like with that slight decline there. You can see our subgroups by grade level, that 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. Again, looking at a diagonal really helps you see a cohort of students and what it looked like, probably the best picture of that group of students. For example, in 2022, you can see where 3rd grade scored 36.7%, then the next year at 44%, and the next year at 46.8%. So that's showing you, with some ins and outs, mostly that one group of students. Here's our elementary schools split out by subgroups of ethnicity. And then here's our subgroup that were self-identified as Native American for ethnicity, and the other subgroups combined. Here's those that are identified as being in poverty compared to our other group. And then we've got our students with a disability. For comparison. And then here is our ELA for middle school. This is combined, all of those middle school grades, 6, 7, and 8. You can see them split out by grade. So we can see in 2022 that the sixth graders were at 41.8. Then the next year they were at 47, and the next year they were at 48.4. So that diagonal, and don't forget there's that gap in 2020. Here's our ELA by ethnicity for middle school. All of those subgroups. And there's a lot of variation. It is those groups combined. And again, eighth grade is leaving, sixth grade is coming in. There's quite a bit of variation just in the sizes. You've got those comparing all of the other ethnic subgroups. And then looking at our students with disabilities in middle school for ELA. And they do separate out when we're looking at that 95%. We may get a report like one school that they're like this subgroup in only science or something. So that's kind of interesting that they could be in one section of the test that they didn't meet 95% in, but in other sections they do. So it can be a little all over the place. And then this is for our 11th grade, remembering again that they are completely different groups of students. There's really not anything in common between them. Again, you can see that gap in there because there was not the N size of at least 10 for us to have data for a subgroup that year. And then the subgroup of those that self-identify as Native American with the others combined together to compare. Those that are qualified for free and reduced lunch. And our students with disabilities so that you can see that comparison. Again, looking at that ELA cohort data by color. And so you can kind of see how it stair steps across grades. We could add another row to this in the 2021 scores. But other than that, we cannot because of that gap in year 2020. So program updates, science, this.
Really quick question.
Yes, please, sorry.
So I noticed on ELA, noticed on a few of for middle and elementary, that it seemed like there was kind of a peak in 2019. Do we have any like data or support, like that something happened, curriculum was different, our staff numbers, like, do we have, I just noticed consistently on like 3 or 4 of them, it was like 2019 was this, so I thought, what were we doing right, or what was different, or, so I just wondered if anyone else had noticed that or knew of something different. It's probably kind of early in the ELA section, I
Okay.
noticed. And it didn't seem to translate as much in high school, but middle and elementary, it seemed like 2019 was like a peak. Right.
I think they did get new curriculum, reading curriculum, maybe the year before, but I would also say that is well into that strategic plan of that administration. And so you're talking about, they put that in place in 2017, and by year 3, you're really starting to see results.
I'd second what Katie said. I remember following that very closely. The strategic plan was approved and implemented in 2016. I came on the board in 2017, and everything was ELA. Reading by 3rd grade was the goal. And at almost every decision that was made, there was really, and I remember in 2019 being like, oh, look at that. Like,
That's
that,
right.
like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And then COVID happened, and it kind of
Nationwide.
Nationwide,
saw that- we
absolutely,
saw it nationwide.
absolutely.
Yep.
I am not laying
No,
that
yeah.
anywhere
Yeah.
specifically in the district. But I do think that that little peak, it really felt like it was the result of
Mm-hmm.
very focused attention on ELA and reading by third grade.
Thank you very much, lady.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, is that the end of the report card report or?
I
No,
have
we're
a
going
few
on.
more. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Science, this is the first year that science is being calculated into overall district scores. So in future years, we believe we'll get science data like we are the ELA and the math. And then, management of our EL students is now under the direction of federal programs. So that did switch over this year. I just wanted to point that out. Our EL, our English learner students, at the end of last school year, we had 157 students in that subgroup. And for English learners on track, the year before had been 37%, then last year was 26%. Every year, some students exit the program, and then new students, some who are first year in country enter. So there is significant variation in this subgroup. Just thought that would be of interest to you. Okay, yeah, I think I'm on the right here. Make sure it seemed like it skipped ahead, but it didn't. Okay. Here looking at attendance and graduation. Overall attendance increased from the year before. Dr. Conroy is working to streamline the common protocols at all entities. On-time high school graduation was up 2%. High school completion was down from the year before. The year before that, high school completion was 86%. And then it's 82% that year after. And then high school on-time graduation improved. College and career readiness is up 4% from the year before that. One of the things that we do that kind of measures that college and career readiness is we give a test called the NCRC. And this is the last year that the state, the DOE will be paying for that test. And so it provides a certification that goes on the students' diplomas. But the DOE found that employers didn't really find that certification relevant. And they thought that there were some concerns with test reliability. So they've decided to discontinue that. We have no idea what that's going to mean for the next year. But it's something that lags. So they'll need to tell us before next school year starts. So I anticipate that looking different as well. Bright spots. We did see improved proficiency scores in Native American student subgroup in high school ELA, middle school ELA, and elementary math. Some of those were not big improvements, but we saw some. 8th grade math did improve in proficiency. High school subgroup of students with a disability improved. District attendance up 1%, on-time graduation up 2%, and CCR up 4%. Opportunities for growth. We are not satisfied with our results. We continue to focus on improvement district-wide in all areas, academic and non-academic. Any other questions? College and career readiness.
So once you have these results, how are you guys digging into them and responding to them?
The schools get them when they do their kind of a data dig that happens right when school gets out, and they use them as they are making their school improvement plan. So the school improvement plan that they're using this school year is based on this data.
And are they able to dig down all the way to the teacher level?
Yes, they are able to do that. Now, it's not all like cleaned up and released and coming as a whole package to us until after school starts in the fall, but we can look at individual student test scores. We can get into something that's called SD stars, and that looks at those students' test score, and we're able to put that together and take a look at it in June. So that has informed already what's going on this school year.
Thank you. The one thing that, I guess I just would like to see, I guess, in terms of, the high school graduation rate, can we
Mhm.
break that down as well into like the subcategories you did
Okay.
with all the ELA and the math?
Yep.
I just would like to see where we're at in terms of year by year.
Mhm.
I mean, we have one of the largest Native American graduations, and this year looks to be on track to be even a bigger event. So I'm looking to see, well, is it us? I mean, are we doing this? Is
Mhm.
it rising? You know,
Mhm.
because it's just one of those
It
things
feels
where,
like it's growing, but is it really?
yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of where I'm at with that. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I could get that breakdown,
Yep,
or if,
yep.
I just would like to.
Well,
to
and
see
it's
that.
interesting because even if the number of graduates is improving, that doesn't mean by percentage. So looking at that would be really interesting. So we still have more Native American graduates, but what is it by percentage overall? So yes, I will get that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, Mr. Berkman.
Thank you. I have more like comments than questions, I guess. The first, thank you for going through all that. But I also did like check out a little bit, I'll be honest, because it's a standardized test, and standardized tests for me are always a little bit difficult, and that's kind of the first thing that I want to talk about. I
Yep.
was, while you were going through our data, I was also looking at like, what did other districts do and what did other states do? And I encourage the rest of the board and the rest of the public to also check that out, because you see that 30-some%,
Mhm.
and that sounds terrible until you look at the rest of the state and you look at other states. And the highest I could find was like Massachusetts or something at like 55%, which is bad still. But part of that is also the design of the test. If it was a test that everyone was getting 100% on, they would say that's a bad test, it's too easy, we'd use a different test. I would argue that this one's possibly too hard, and that's why we're at 30-some%. So I know I haven't been in the classroom for a while now, but as was kind of mentioned here, I know that we're actually doing better than what the standardized test says. The other comment that I wanted to add in was looking at the kind of graphs there and how they go up and down. I know we had a conversation about like, how do we focus our efforts? And to Mr. Swan's points that he's been making, if you look at the graph, that Native American graph closely matches our total graph. I think largely because it is a large subset that we're not seeing the best results from. So if we can, I think, what I'm noticing from that graph is if we can focus our efforts kind of in that area, that they kind of grow together and go down together. So those are my only two things that I just kind of want to add in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berkman. Ms. Stevenson.
Thanks. I kind of want to echo what Michael said. That last slide, there's a lot of areas for growth and improvement, and we are just gonna make the district better. That's kind of the impression that slide, we're just gonna do it.
Mhm.
We're gonna work in every area to make it better. And I almost feel, having been on the board when we had a targeted goal and worked specifically where everybody was making a decision based on that goal, and you could see progress, our Native American students are not doing well in this district, and it's having an impact on our whole community. And I don't know why we can't say that that's our goal, like that's the group, that more than the other groups, that's the group. It's not just our kids living in poverty, it's our Native kids, and there's a lot that goes into it. I don't pretend to know why. I don't pretend to know the answer but like, I don't think it's so bad to say the words. We're really actually particularly failing this group, and we're gonna focus our energy on doing better. And as Michael said, typically, all the kids are gonna do better if we can, when we get results up for that group. So I'm gonna continue to advocate for an update to our strategic plan that specifically addresses that group. There's been a lot of, I have brought it up, and it's always been like, trust the plan, but I want to see more specifics. I don't, that's just me as one member of the Board of Education, but these numbers have never changed, and I think we can, we can't just accept that we can't change them, there's a lot of hand wringing. One, I am gonna throw the district a bone here. Please don't interpret what I'm saying as being upset with individuals in this district and the job they're doing, because I see good things happening in this district all the time, people going way out of their way to make an effort to help kids learn. So And I would like to say that when our enrollment has gone down, my impression is that a lot of the kids who have left the district are ones with supportive families who have taken them from our district and put them in private schools or homeschooling, or even in the Shetty Shakowin Academy. I don't remember the name of it, but the
But I
Academy or Academy, so the Shetty Shakowin Academy. Those kids leaving the district also have an impact on these numbers because we're talking percentages. And I think it's important to point that out and to
Yeah.
remember that when we're looking at them, just for us to
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Well, and you said, it's going to be better. We do have very specific actions that we are taking. And so I've got a few here, some of the things that we're working on for our ELA. We have a whole list of things that we're working on for math. And it's tough. It really is. So I appreciate what you're saying and I appreciate the concerns and they are real. Yeah.
So that was part 2 of my question. And maybe Dr. Strasser, you might know this too, since you work closely with the principals. Have there been any specific actions taken that you can highlight based on these, when principals got these results? Did they pivot at all starting the school year? We're gonna do something different, or we're gonna work specifically on this because we don't like that number.
It's hard to generalize that. I think every principal was very intentional about creating their school improvement plans. And one thing that, attendance is day-to-day attendance is a big deal. And of course, that's reflected on the report card, not specifically in all the data for the SBAC results that you saw here. But I know we've made concerted efforts in many of our schools to do things differently regarding attendance and positive attendance, and just the tone around that. So I know that's taking place. I think, and I'm hopeful that we'll see results from the math implementation with Mathia. We're in year 2 on that, and hopefully, kind of going back to Ms. Clapham's comments, when do you see the results really move and get to where we hope and expect when you do a new curriculum implementation, and hopefully we're starting to see results moving upward with this year in year 2. And I know that's been a big emphasis, but it's hard to break it down by other than just to generalize. Yeah, they're very in tune with their school and their needs, and trying to move that forward.
One thing I could say specifically that is going on is someone reached out to me and they're helping put things together for Smarter Balanced, which is the South Dakota Achievement Test. And they said that they would like to talk to some of our students because of our large Native American population and looking at how they could improve the test. And so we have a couple of schools that have set that up, that with parent permission, that they'll be getting some information. They're talking to students to try to make this test better. And they're taking that input from students in Rapid City, and a portion of those students are Native American students. So when we have those opportunities come to us, we do seize them because we want to play a part in that and helping make it better, so that it works better for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I think Ivan, then your hand's up and then Michael's hand's up. So I'm trying to keep
Yep.
up in order with everybody. Couple of things. One, I actually wrote that down, and not that, there really is, I don't want to say rabbit hole, but you can really get into with, how tests are culturally sensitive or relevant makes a difference. And you see it nationwide. Like you can even, I've read studies about, like, if you look at children who live places where there are no like fresh produce and they're asked to identify like broccoli, they've never actually seen it because where they live, it doesn't. And so I think that I would be interested, and I think it's great that they are asking, because I do think that plays a factor. I also kind of, to follow up on something Ms. Stephenson said, and back up one, I realized that because these numbers people base so much on, it really puts you in a hot seat in a hard place. And I want to tell you, I am sorry that you have to sit, like somebody has to sit there and it's hard.
Yeah.
But I do think to follow up, okay, well, we're kind of afraid. Said this may be unpopular, but I'm just gonna say it. I think there is we're afraid to say like this group, and I feel like if we substituted that and just said, our male students are underperforming.
Mhm.
That's societally saying that, and we would say, well, why are only the boys on? Like, we would address that. So I think there is a social and cultural, like there is a fear in saying like this group because it is a racial or ethnic group, but it's a fact. And I think we have to stop, like, I totally agree with you. We have to stop, like, we're gonna tiptoe around and make it sound like, no, that's the facts. Like I said, whether it's the red-haired children are not doing well. Okay, well, there is a reason and we need to address it. So I think part of it, not you, but it is that this uncomfortability with identifying this group, and it's facts and we see it, and yes, we have to address it. Another question I had was, so if they aren't gonna do the NCRC, what then will now identify college and career readiness? Will there be anything?
Yes, there are some things that are in there already, which is by the classes that students take. Particularly ones that are in some of the pathways. There are different like internship and, things that students do that way. But something else that's on there is the ACT score that students get. Well, starting next year, our 11th graders are taking the ACT. So we can't really count the ACT score for this data and for college and career readiness. So they have two things they're gonna have to work out what we're gonna do without. And so there's some things that, at the last meeting, they're like, we're working on it. We don't quite know yet, but there's gonna be some changes coming to that. But again, some of it is, could be how they do on a AccuPlacer if they take that test, which some, WDT has students take the AccuPlacer. It could be AP, taking AP courses and scores on AP tests. So there are a variety of things that are kind of in that bucket right now. But one of them is the NCRC test and ACT. So they're gonna have to figure it out.
Mr. Swan.
Thank you. Mrs. Roberts, I really don't hope you're taking these personal. I mean, these are
Yeah.
one of these things where I don't want to seem like it's kill the messenger. You know what I mean? Because I just would like answers to some questions, you know what I mean, that I have.
Yeah.
So if I seem like I'm coming off like I'm going, want to drop the people's elbow on you, it's not, you know what I mean? I just want to make sure that's defined. The one thing that I've always, as a school administrator, as a former educator, I've always talked about this with my staffs, and it's, you raise the floor, you're gonna raise the roof.
Mhm.
And right now, I can see where the floor is. Believe me, if we concentrate on that, you're gonna go through the roof. I truly, honestly believe that and have practiced that my entire career. So that's what my emphasis would like to be. I'm really, really glad that these are coming out because it gives us as an opportunity, and in speaking with Native parents, we have an obligation as well. You know what I mean? It's not just we send them to school and Dr. Strasser's going to make them all scientists. We have to send our kids to school on a consistent basis and creating opportunities for them. That's all it is creating those opportunities. One of the things that was brought up to me was these test scores when I first got on the board,
Mhm.
was they said, are we, Lakotas, Native Americans across the United States, some of these communities had emptied their communities of eligible men and women up to the percentage of like 93%. joining the service. And that used to be where we would get our honor and we'd be able to do this. And I think right now, are we even looking at the ASVAB, I mean, because it's one of those things where it is an avenue to create opportunity, you know what I mean? So I'm really
Yeah.
honestly in tune with that. But to get to a point is that if we can't prepare students, and that's just all students, if we can't prepare students for life after high school, are we really doing our jobs? I mean, this isn't a vindication of any one teacher, all teachers, anything of that nature, principals, anybody. It's just a general common question to everyone to say, are we preparing them for life after us?
Mhm.
And I think that's a big question that we have to ask. And if we're not able to do that, if they're not passing the ASVAB, if they're not passing these are these are gatekeepers into college, into Western Dakota VOTEC, into the service. We've taken away opportunities. And those are, flat line. I mean, I've talked to a few kids that didn't pass it. So, and it also on the other side of this is that, it's been brought up in this room before, is that Rapid City is a, pipeline to prison. Are we contributing to that with this? So these are deeper questions that I know you got to get back to Spearfish, so I'll stop talking.
No,
But I really want
Yeah.
to, I really want, these are deep questions that our pillars need to answer. We need to answer, because if we don't answer them, then they're going to continue to
Yes.
show up. Thank you.
students do take the ASVAB, and then it's an opportunity, and we do set up times that in all of the high schools, the comprehensive high school and at the alternative academy, when students are taking the ASVAB every year. That is by choice, and some people mark for their students in their paperwork, they do not want them to be contacted by a military recruiter. So that is a family choice, but that certainly can be a great career option and a great option to get some further training and other things. Many military people in my history and my family, like many other families, and it can be a really nice option. I think one of the best things when we're talking about, are we preparing students for life after us or life after the schools, is looking at the students that you know. Do you feel like they're prepared? Do their families feel like they're prepared? Because more so than looking at this data is, what do they feel like that looks like? Because I think that's a more accurate picture, more, really something that is helpful in, what we feel like we're getting as a whole for those students. So I appreciate that and some of the things that you have to say, and we care very much about it. I don't know, like it feels bad to look at this, but I don't want to hide it. I think our community, I think our everyone needs to know this is where we're at. And I know that teachers take it seriously. I know that our staff does. I know teachers that are in tears when they see it, because they're working so hard and they care so much. I've seen people cry when they see the results that came from the students when they put their heart and soul into it. So, yeah.
Can I just add to, as we look at a lot of data tonight, specifically around academic progress, we also do parent engagement surveys, and that's another piece that I think speaks to, when you look at how are we moving kids, how do they feel about their experience, what are parents' perceptions of our schools and the progress we're making. So that's something that comes into February, March timeframe. So another good piece of information to help guide our decision-making, and our schools, and our principals utilize that information when they make their school improvement plans and they talk about their school culture. So a lot of that goes into how they try to move, into the next year. So they are looking holistically at different data points. And of course, this is important information. Ms. Roberts talked a little bit about MAP testing. That is kind of your continual 3 points through the year. So there's a lot that goes into how we look at student progress holistically.
Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. I almost put my hand down because I'm gonna say kind of the same thing, but I figured I'd add my voice too. So first off, to what, Director Roberts was saying, I wanted to clarify, I'm not brushing off this test as like, yeah, whatever. It's 30%, everyone has it. I did just want to add that though, is like, I've been one of those teachers. It's like, wow, 30%. Well, they weren't mine because I didn't teach juniors, but, see, I was made. But I did just want to clarify that. I'm fully aware we have room for growth. I don't want anyone out there to think that I don't take this seriously, but to all the points that were made. And then to Mr. Swan's point that he was talking about, I didn't have the fancy floor and ceiling thing, but I don't know as much about ELA, but I do have a large math background, and there are also large bodies of research that show that when you focus on those groups that need it, everyone grows. I think a lot of time there's this perception of like, what about my advanced kid? What about my kid that's already proficient? Are they going to miss out on things? And what the research says is no, they're also going to do better when we focus on these people that need it because of things like behaviors are better. They're surrounded by everyone who's on the same page, so you can move faster forward together. There's just little things like that that maybe aren't surface level, don't seem right. It feels like you're taking time, you're taking time from those other kids, but really by focusing in on those who need it, it moves everyone forward. So just want to add those two things. Thank you.
Very much. Ms. Stephenson.
Thanks. And, you know, I do know recent graduates, they're doing fantastic. I think that makes it all the more hard. And my own daughter's experience in this district, they have learned things I could never have taught them, you know, like I never, and they're doing so well. And that makes it even more heartbreaking to see the numbers of kids who aren't. It just, it just, again, saying what's going on and setting specific action plan, like this data, we look at it every year. And, I just think we need more action on this that's targeted. The other question I had, and this is, since we're talking about how this is just one data point, so the PLCs during the year are looking at data that is not this, right? Like,
Yeah, they've look at a variety of data from these scores to current scores that they're receiving and working through. Yeah.
And the scores, can you remind me what mid-year data they're getting? Is it significantly different than SBAC or?
Well, we don't know because they're testing it right now, but their mid-year data ranges, kindergarten and first grade is giving the Acadians.
Okay.
Second through eighth is doing the MAP. We're trying out something new with junior kindergarten. And then in all classes, of course, there's the formative assessments and summative assessments that teachers are giving. So they may be looking at, hey, we all gave this test over Unit 5 in English 9. What does that look like? Are our students making progress? Do we need to change up how we did it? Like there's a gap in question 6 that it seems like nobody got. So we really missed the boat. How can we fix it? And oh my gosh, questions 12 and 13 were awesome. So that's what the PLC is doing weekly.
And are those formative and summative assessments, are they uniform across the district? Like every third grade classroom is getting the same ELA formative assessments?
They are not, and it's always a fine line. Should they be? Because there's part of the art and science of teaching and that they have completely different groups of students. I think, you know, the group of students you have in your class, it's like, you know, a vegetable soup and you like take out a scoop and what you got, like, oh, I didn't get any green beans in mine. You know, it's out of the same pot, but you get a completely different mix and they have different needs. So it's kind of tough, how much there should be the same. But that MAP test, the Acadience test, the pre-ACT,
Those are the same.
those are the same across the entire district.
Yeah, I suppose any more than that, that would standardize across the district would be too much.
And there's going to be
Or too rigid.
commonalities, because they're assessing on the same standards, how are our students doing in comparison to this standard? But then there are some differences as well.
And you'll see a lot more common assessments in each school building, especially at our high schools. You're going to see those teams working together to have common formative assessments.
Okay.
Mrs. Urban?
I have so many thoughts, so I'll try and be succinct, but I think it's important that we recognize that we're not just doing this work sort of in a vacuum, that we need to look at partnerships, particularly when it comes to our Native community. There has been a huge rise in violent crime following COVID, and that has to impact our students. It just does. And if you look at our scores pre-COVID, particularly at a couple of our North Side schools, they plummeted. And so I think there has to be some conversation about how are we working with these different entities in our community to better that community and serve them in a way that is helpful. And I think there is behaviors have definitely played a role as well. If you haven't read Dr. Stavum's article about behaviors, it's really eye-opening. And it's so true. That's probably impacting our scores. And with all that being said, I think Michael made a really good point that if you look at other districts in our state, in our country, our scores are not, they're not completely they're pretty normal in a lot of ways. And so I know that the community would like to say, this is horrific and Rapid City Area Schools is so bad. And while we're absolutely trying to do better, it's not so crazy when you look at the bigger picture.
Right. Any other questions? No. Well, Director Roberts, thank you so much for your time and answering us questions, and Dr. Strasser, and of course, I'm sure we'll have more questions, and as the data cycle and we get more information on assessments and things, I'm sure we'll have more questions, and we really appreciate you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
And there will be a time here shortly when we're giving a pillar update. So you'll be hearing more about what our scores are looking like, coming up here shortly. And Mr. Swan, I will make sure that I get back to you, and I'll probably just send that information to the whole group so that you can see it. But on your questions about who was when the 5 and 10 points, which actually that report, interestingly enough, is called the bubble. So it's right on the bubble. And then about those subgroups for high school graduation, I'll be looking for that information and get that to you as well.
Thank you.
All right, we are gonna move on to letter B, our school safety and weapons detection system, and Mr. Sargent. What is a week?
Like, get rid of that notification.
And it's hard to talk, made it worse.
So sorry.
All right, the floor is yours, Mr. Sargent.
All right, as we look at Mr. Sargent's presentation tonight, he and I have been talking a lot about weapons detection systems, and we've had some changes that he's gonna go over. So glad that he's here to share some of that information with you.
Good evening, everyone. We are gonna jump into the world of weapon detection systems. It's vast, it's exciting. No one will fall asleep, I promise. So we started working with a company called Open Gate Technologies.
Oh, mama.
Just so everyone knows, that's happened probably 15 or 20 times in the last 20 years by Shirley. So, and I want to jump into this just a little bit more. And it kind of explains some things. So right out of the gate, we show, no pun intended, we show a vast computer system on the left, and on the right, we show two columns. What you see on the left is Open Gate Technologies computer system, their CPUs, and how it runs their company and the vastness of how large this is to what we would have at Open Gate. We have 10 sets of these weapon detection systems, and they're pretty impressive. And what I'm trying to do is just explain how truly simple the system is for us. We ordered our weapon detection systems in May of 24. Systems were received in late August under the SAFE grant, the federal grant that we got a few years ago. The trainer was conducted in October of 2024 this year at South Middle School. Principal Darren Schmidt was nice enough to let us use his staff and his students voluntarily if they wanted to test it out for us. And it was incredibly eye-opening and an incredible learning experience. Currently, we have 4 train the trainers in the Rapid City area schools, myself being one of them, and then 1 from each of our high school right now. And it worked out. Dr. Strasser came out, we made him walk through it. We put rocks in his pockets, walk through it, and it would go off. They're not rocks, they're designed to alert the system for us. And it was eye-opening. It was impressive. We had local law enforcement walk through it for us, and we could control the sensitivity of everything and pick up exactly what we were looking for. So pretty impressive system. The Open Gate technology is controlled by us, by our cell phones. We download the app, which I have on my work phone, and we control what we're looking for. So it's easily set up. The detection is simple. It's we control what they call signaling parameters through the app. It weighs 25 pounds. So, and we're going to talk about that here in a couple slides of how we can move our, we'll call them columns, our weapon detection systems, anywhere. For example, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but if we wanted to, we could put them right outside here and have people who are coming in for our meetings go through weapon detection systems. That is just an example on how simple it really is. I know this is a big slide with a lot of information on it, but these are some lessons learned from our training. To operate the system efficiently, we need 2 to 3 people per station. The staffing level ensures the weapon detection systems are used properly, efficiently, enhancing the security process. By having enough staff, the system can be monitored, maintained, and adjusted as needed to maximize its effectiveness. With sufficient personnel at each station, the flow of people through the security checkpoint can be expedited. Bishop Carr, you talked about coming back from New York just here a few hours ago, going through TSA at an airport, slows everybody down. With the appropriate staffing, this goes rather quickly. We were probably running what our trainer would tell us is well in excess of 100 kids every 20 minutes through the system. So that worked out pretty well for us. In order to run this the way the company says we need to, Central High School would need 2 stations, one at the main entrance, one at the east entrance, and it would be 4 to 6 additional security officers. Central High School has, because it's a 360-degree campus, has a few more access egress points. They would need 6 to 9 security personnel. And then Rapid City Alternative High School would need 1. They have the main entrance. We could get away with 2 to 3. One of the beautiful things about this is its portability, and it runs on batteries like your drills and hedge clippers. You charge your battery, you put the battery in, and you can move these to areas like O'Hara Stadium, Central's Nas Gym, Stevens, Higher Gym. We can move them anywhere we need to. Contrary to metal detectors, OpenGate does not require a mechanical or electronic connection between the 2 pillars. Each pillar runs individually. We control that through our cell phones, through the app. It's an acoustic, optical signal, sound and light. Located at the top of the pillars, provided real-time status of alarm indications. It tells us where the alarm system is alerting, which tells us where a potential weapon might be. OpenGate is not, or is the most portable, elegant, and easy to move. We moved them. We tested them first going through day 1 of training at Kib and Custer, then literally put them in the back of my pickup, moved them to South for its actual test day. And it was so simple and so easy. It was a cop-proof system. I like to say that, being who I am, and pick on my local friends in law enforcement. The structure is embedded with electrodes throughout the whole thing. That's how we know where everything's at. The cap. I don't know if we saw it in the very beginning. I wanted to show a picture of that. You can see the 2 dots on each. That's called the cap. That one tells you that something's going on, whether it's red or green. The OpenGate power is supplied either by your standard plugins or, like I said, the battery packs if we're at O'Hara Stadium and we don't have access to outlets. Again, versatile, simple, functions on what we would call multi-caliber weapons or IEDs, incendiary explosive devices. Faster screening. The beautiful thing is some of the concerns we did have is kids would have to get to school a half an hour to 45 minutes earlier. That is one of my major concerns when we are running children through and kind of making a little bit of a game of it with these kids who were so nice enough to let us use them for training. It was fantastic. And they were going through back to class. No one was late. So these are just some of what I would call the low-hanging fruit information on our weapon detection systems. Do you guys have any, I mean, I'm certain you will if you don't, but do you have any questions now?
Well, how, Mr. Berkland, you go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, I did have a question regarding that speed. So would, like a Central High School, would each entrance have more than one of these sets? Or are we thinking like one set or not every kid or what's?
So currently we're just kind of looking at numbers, we have a total of 10 sets right now. That's what we ordered. So we would break them up currently. It's kind of our test pattern, so to speak, with our high schools. And we could put 4 at Stevens, 3 at Central, 3 at Rapid City High School. And we can control the numbers of where we have them. Central would probably.
Please
have-
put your mic closer. Thank you.
Central would probably have 2 to 3 in the front and, or I'm sorry, 2 in the front, 2 in the side. Stevens would have sets all the way around, and we would still have enough to have 1 or 2 sets over at Rapid City High School. So again, my biggest concern is us causing the problem by looking for a problem. And by doing it, running it this way with a few extra sets and a few extra people, we can get kids through at a much quicker rate.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because when you first said that, like, 100 kids in 20 minutes, I was like, whoa. You scale that up to Central High School and you're talking 4 or 5 hours, but I think
Well,
we did some.
and no, that's a great question, Mr. Berkland, because we only brought 1 set to Central. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. You were kind of like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I understand your concern. So.
Cool, thank you.
Mr. Swan.
So this is kind of like one at a time. What, I mean, like, I see the poles that you can set up, right? And can you link them so that they're 3 or 4 in a row and get on your mic, would you please?
Yes, so we can control, we will have, again, since we brought up Central, let's just say the front entrance is where we want to focus on. We could put our sets all up and control all multiple sets through our cell phone with their trainer training the rest of the security staff and get people through in 3 different columns, so to speak. Am I answering your question, Mr.?
Yeah, that's just a question, you know what I mean? Cause that would be like a huge, like, log jam, you know what I mean? I'm just kind of going through with what Michael's talking about, you know, is it gonna be a contest? Like can 2 people go through at the same time or just 1 at a time or, you know?
It's 1 at a time, but it is rapid pace. It's like everyone's late for a flight going through TSA. You go through quickly and we control the sensitivity of what we want to look for. So for example, your trapper keeper binders, we would control the sensitivity where that would not go off. And that makes it go for what we feel the concern is. These were purchased for weapons. So what are we looking for as far as weapons? Are we looking for firearms? Okay, we are. So then we control the sensitivity to that. So the kids with thumb drives and trapper keepers and full metal ink pens, it's not gonna go off on that. So we control that. So the child goes through, boom, they're gone. If it goes off, then we have to go to the next step, and that's checking the backpack, searching, what have you on that point. But for starters, this is where we're at, and we're really moving this in the right direction. And we're going slow and cautiously on this too. This isn't just something we're just gonna throw up. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Bishop Carr.
I don't wait in the long TSA line because I have TSA pre-check and police. So we have a separate line, shorter line. But anyway, this was, when I came on the board, our school security was near and dear to my heart. So it's exciting to hear the progress that we've made. But I think if I'm gonna ask you a question, and depending on your answer to the question is whether my fire is gonna be doused by a big bucket of water. The additional staffing, is that new people or current people that we can use? Current already employed staff or new? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I could hear you. You're fine.
So is it current staff employees or are these additional people need to be hired? Here goes the bucket of cold water.
I believe what Mr. Sargent has listed here is the number of staff it takes to adequately operate them for efficient flow.
Okay.
So we have to evaluate that against our current staffing for security, and there will be a discrepancy. So one of the things holding us back currently with implementing into this year is that we do not have enough security personnel to train to do this effectively at our high schools.
Okay, I feel like I'm interrogating one of my sons about class and I'm asking them a question and they do. So what I'm hearing you say is that you either don't know the answer or the answer is it will be part current employees and part still needing to hire new people to run it.
I will answer your question because
Okay.
I know the answer.
All right.
We don't have enough right
All
now.
right.
We do need more staffing, unfortunately. And I don't want to leave the the stigma of maybe we have enough. We don't.
Okay.
In order for our current security staff in all of our buildings to do their current responsibilities, adding this to them, they can't be in two places at the same time.
Yeah.
So we do need a few more security staff at all of our buildings.
Okay, so then my input, that's gonna be a challenge because there are other departments that are asking the board for similar types of staffing to adequately take care of what, you know, what their department is. So just that it's a challenge, not that it, for me, that I don't want it, I'm not still excited, but the financial part of needing more staffing is gonna be, quite frankly, a challenge.
Yeah, and that's something that I've looked into. I've talked with Dr. Strasser about quite a bit, and we have some ideas on how to implement the equipment, the technology beforehand, but bottom line is we will definitely need some additional staffing.
Thank you.
So my question was, as we talk about like trialing it, without having any new staffing at all, do you see benefit in just having, I don't want to say sporadically, it should be strategically, but utilizing the technology we have intermittently, like, okay, we're gonna set it up at Central on Tuesday, and then the next week it's, you know, at Stevens. Is that beneficial? Am I crazy? Is that a terrible idea? I just wonder when, I feel like when people are like, well, we could have weapons detection today, I don't know, that perhaps it's a deterrent. Maybe I'm completely wrong and that's an awful idea.
I would want to make sure that we are 1,000,000% random when we do that. Because for example, I have worked a lot recently with North Middle School on some stuff. I don't want to have the implementation or the idea that we're going to start putting these at North periodically. I want to make sure we're doing this randomly if we do that. However, pulling staff members from their primary responsibility to this responsibility, we're still going to need help. We're going to need additional employees or vice versa. I don't want Stevens to get the idea that they're always the lucky ones because of all their egress points. And so these are some things that we're working on diligently, trying to understand, trying to figure out the best way for us to implement this new technology.
I think we need to be very careful about, and I appreciate your thoughts on, can we still use with the current staffing that we have, just move it around? But that does create a lot of challenging optics and fairness, equity, however you want to look at it across the district. I would strongly encourage us to commit to, if we're going to do this, we're going to do that at all our high schools every single day. And that's the value that we place on it. That's what I would encourage. And I know if we can't, we have to look at at options like you, brought up, and we could definitely take a look at that.
Thank you, Ms. Stephenson.
So to be clear, 10 units is 20 to 30 staff.
Maximum.
Oh, because I thought so it's 6 units that we have? Okay,
Operating sets. For example, Stevens right now is 6 to 9. So they probably have 4 sets. And it'd be 2 to 3 people per set working. So then once we start to truly, we can run them under the circumstances, training's done, we would not need to have 2 to 3 people per set, per station. We can start to adjust that. So, for example, one of the things we were thinking about is we're gonna hire 6. This is just hypothetical.
Get him, sure.
you're gonna have to repeat that whole answer.
So we're gonna start to go in and we're gonna start to put weapon detection systems at Stevens. And we're gonna utilize this with 6 employees, 6 full-time employees. We would end up trying more of a test base on learning how to operate the system correctly. And then we could put all 4 stations up hypothetically with the 6 people we currently have, 2 at each station, and then possibly start to rotate the other security staff that is existing into that station. Central's 4 to 6. They have 2 main access egress points. And we could put stations up at the east end that faces Monument. And then again, the main entrance coming in from the north. So we can start to operate this with new employees and existing employees. And that would help us basically learn how to use the system correctly, where we wouldn't need 3 people at each station, we'd need 2. And if we have these stations next to each other, that's where we can start to then operate where 1 searcher instead of 2 searchers, and then operators themselves. Each system would have to have an operator, but we wouldn't need to have existing employees doing the search. We can start to slow that aspect down, which was actually better and beneficial for us anyway. Am I making sense, Ms. Stephenson?
Yeah, I just wanted the number of staff that would
Okay.
need to use these, so. I think with limited budget, we have to make decisions carefully, and I know that intuitively we think, okay, weapons detection reduces school shootings, but do you know of any data that actually shows that weapons detection systems, that schools, that of the past 20 years of school shootings, none of them have happened in a school with a weapons detection system?
I have access to that through OpenGate, and I can go ahead and pull that documentation and I'll email it to you soon, probably sometime tomorrow. If that's
Would you
okay.
say that documentation exists?
Yes, it
that
does.
there is evidence that
There
this
is
would deter?
evidence, yes.
I guess
And-
it's just very hard for me to imagine. I mean, also, it's hard for me to imagine a school shooting. It's just unimaginable. But what you hear is that these are planned out events, and it's hard for me to imagine that a kid wouldn't plan out like how to get into Stevens. I mean, there's kids leaving every door all the time. I guess
90% of school shootings are an inside threat, which is exactly what you're saying. And of that 90%, almost 100%, it's 98%, someone knew ahead of time. So everything you're saying makes total sense to me. And these are the things that we are doing everything we can to stop and do away with. That's the ultimate goal. And so when I hear you say that, I can kind of feel myself get on my soapbox because I agree with you. How can we imagine that? I can't. And I've been doing this job here for 2 years and then prior to that for 26. So yeah, I totally understand everything you're saying and I'm hoping that I'm explaining this well enough. And maybe one of the best things to do is another training session where we can get some of you guys out there so you can see it, so you can go through it and you can understand how this system works and how it needs to be operated. I think that's actually a really good idea. I would love to have you guys come out.
Well, don't interpret me that I don't think it worked.
No,
The
I,
weapons detections, it sounds really slick and I believe that. I just, we heard at the ASBSD conference, a woman who's a counselor talking about how she stopped a school shooting and she did it because she knew the kids and she identified, she had relationships. And so when I'm thinking about, okay, 10 more staff for security, how many counselors could we have to build more relationships and identify threats? And what is, I guess I would like to know, what is the evidence-based best practice for avoiding school shootings? If I had to weigh the value. And I don't know the answer. But I mean, these are the kind of questions that we have to have all the time when people say, we need more mental health and we need more social workers. And I can see that being an important element to preventing, violence in our schools.
I totally agree with everything you just said. And where is the data, the documentation that supports one way or the other? I am certain that if I were to go and start reaching out to my counterparts in different areas, I could find documentation that would support both. And that's the part that for me is so disconcerting. Hey, we just want to do the best thing for our kids. That's what we want to do. And I can see it in your eyes when you're kind of nodding along with me. I can see that you're in the same boat. And so I've seen counselors do amazing things, but I've also seen technology help us in the aspect. I mean, it's such a catch-22. Which direction do we go?
Yeah, in a perfect world, we do both, 100%. But we don't have unlimited funds, so.
Can I just add to that? I totally agree. Security measures, social workers, immense value, and that's all part of bringing great value to our students and creating that school culture. One of the things that Matt and I have talked about is the company that did the training and provides all this for us has talked about teachers coming in and helping with security measures. So walking kids through, knowing that that'll come up at some point, I just want to caution that I would have a lot of concern about teachers helping out with this system and just put that out there. It's not their role. I think schools use it as a way to make it viable to have these systems in. And when we're talking about adding positions, security positions to make it work, that's one way to offset costs. I just want to put that out there for you to contemplate, knowing that it'll probably come up at some point and that I would discourage that line of thinking.
So, you might have to educate me because this happened before I was on, but were these, they were through a grant? And,
Yes.
Was the grant, we could only get these with that grant? Because I'm just wondering why we purchased them if we didn't have the staff for them.
So this grant was set up prior to my time through the Rapid City Police Department, and part of the grant was specifically for the weapon detection systems. Probably not the greatest answer you wanted, but unfortunately.
Mr. Berkland?
Yeah. So first off, I share a lot of your same concerns, Ms. Stephenson. So if you could send that over to maybe just the whole board, that'd be really great. And I know we've had previous conversations about like the line between school and feeling like a prison and all of that. So that is also for sure in the back of my mind. So I would love to see a little bit more about that. My other question, also kind of related to what Ms. Stephenson said, just to help me understand a little bit regarding staffing. If you have like 3 lanes, let's say at whatever, an entrance, is that 9 people or 3 people? Like
So
station versus,
and again, great questions. I totally understand where you're coming from. Initially, each system should have 3 people. However, I didn't ask for that knowing we just don't have it. So if we could line up each system with 1 observer and then all 3 systems, for using your numbers, 1 searcher, I can guarantee you when this gets operational, I will be at schools all the time assisting in that. But we could make it work down to 4, for example, at Central, but we'd be stretching people thin for a while, especially in the mornings, lunchtime when kids are coming and going. Those are the areas at our high schools that have open campus.
so ideally 9, if there were 3 lanes, ideally 9, but doable with like 4. Is that what I'm hearing?
If we had an ideal budget,
Yeah.
if everything was working for Matt and what he wanted with the Rapid City area schools, absolutely, 9 would be fantastic. But I'm also, I mean, I've been in this game for a while. I understand, and I'd love 4.
Yeah, I'm confident in saying we will not have 9, but I didn't want to understand the difference in the numbers there. So thank you.
All right. President Carr.
I just wanted to say that no matter what type of weapon detection system you have. No, it's not. Now it is. I just wanted to say that no matter what type of weapon detection system that you have, nothing's gonna be 100%. And it's the old adage, if somebody wants to get into your house, no matter, I mean, you can have state of the art, they're gonna figure out how to do it. And so that's not the purpose of the system. The purpose of the system is to be a deterrent. And I think, Mrs. Stephenson, the example that you used, if they had this similar weapons detection system, they would have found that gun that was in that student's backpack, and the counselor would not have to have had that decision. And unfortunately for me, while some people can't imagine it, I can imagine it. I just did a funeral of a young man from our church who was killed because of gun violence, not at a school, but due to gun violence of that high school age group. Hearing of other young men in our community that are dying because of gun violence. And so it is imaginable that somebody could come to school and for whatever reason people do, the things that they do, have the violence. And again, I can't remember what recent shooting that there was when I first came on the board that prompted the discussion of increasing school security. And at that point, we hadn't done anything about school security. There wasn't any evaluation. There wasn't a current evaluation of our security system. And so because of that, I think the world that we live in, this is kind of where we are. It's an important subject, and borrowing money, I think we would be up and running sooner than later.
I want to thank you guys for the questions, the discussion. This is really my soapbox, my passion, where I feel God put me where I'm supposed to be right now. And I want to do the best for this district, for our schools, for our kids, for our staff, and discussion, debate, disagreement, it all makes us better. And I just said, like I said, I want to thank you for that. I love the questions, because no matter what, every single question, whether it's one I agree with or one hey, I'm not so sure about that, it makes me think and what I can do better. So on that note, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sargent. If there's no more questions on that, we will move on to letter C, other. Is there any other? All right.
I just was late to raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
I turned on the microphone and not raised my hand.
All right, Stephenson.
I just wanted to thank the members of the board who showed up on Saturday morning at the Salvation Army hat, shoes, coat, socks, mitten party. No coat, socks, mitten, shoes, and hat. It was a joy to work with you all. It was a volunteer experience that was just about perfect. We were needed, we had a job to do, and it was really fun. So I really appreciate it. I think the community, I think that the people there appreciated that we were there, and I hope we continue to do that together, because I think it's very good outreach to show us walking the walk about serving our community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Swan.
I would just like to thank, I was making sure my microphone was on, so.
Good job.
I would like to thank Dr. Strasser. I mean, he's taken out time out of his day to help do one-on-ones with all of us and to really kind of reach out to us to really, let us know what's going on and gauging our feelings towards things that are going on within the district. So thank you, Dr. Strasser. It was a good coffee this morning, although you didn't drink any, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Swan. Any other? We do have it, and since the person is not present,
Oh,
yes.
excuse me.
We can
I
address-
did not realize she
Okay.
left.
I
Thank you.
will tell you, I did reach out to that person by email with.
Okay,
an explanation
thank you.
on the time, so that was addressed. Mrs. Urban.
I just want to acknowledge, I think the work that the administrative team has done to serve kids that have some behavioral issues between the program over at the academy and then now working with the children's home. I just think it's so important. And I think those kinds of programs, we're going to see our scores improve because they're getting more individualized help. And more often, we're seeing kids with complex needs arrive at our doors and we're sort of expected to take care of them. And if we don't, because we don't have the right tools, or then we're seeing that in our scores and we're supposed to take responsibility for all of that too. And so I think we need to work with parents to engage parents. This just really needs to be a community effort because I think teachers and what schools are expected to do anymore, it's a big ask.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other hands up, so we will move to item 7, which is executive session, SDCL 125-2.1, discussing qualifications, competence, performance of employees. Do you have a motion to enter it? And there will be no formal decisions or votes made after this point. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion second to move into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will move into executive session. Thank you.